Have you ever walked into a room knowing everyone there wanted you to fail? Remember that feeling. The mahogany-paneled office of attorney James Smith smelled like old money and quiet judgment. Jennifer Williams sat rigid in a wingback chair that seemed designed to make her feel small, which wasn't difficult considering the past 3 weeks had already accomplished that feat with surgical precision. Her artisan bakery in Chicago, Jennifer's Table, the name still hurt to think about, had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy exactly 21 days ago. The final tally, $67,000 in business loan debt that she'd personally guaranteed, meaning the creditors could chase her for the rest of her natural life. She'd driven 4 hours from Chicago to this office in Kingston, New York, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, her great-uncle George White's death would offer some small financial reprieve. George had been wealthy once, or so family legend claimed. Wealthy and strange and utterly reclusive, living alone in the Catskill Mountains for longer than Jennifer had been alive. Across the polished conference table sat Aunt Patricia, her father's sister, draped in cashmere that probably cost more than Jennifer's entire monthly food budget. The woman's perfume was expensive, her posture impeccable, her expression a masterwork of controlled disdain. Beside Patricia perched her son Stephen, Jennifer's cousin by blood, but stranger by every measure that mattered. Stephen checked his Rolex with the mechanical precision of someone who needed constant reassurance that time was in fact still passing in a universe that revolved around him. Neither of them had visited George in 20 years. Jennifer knew this because she'd been there summer after summer during her childhood, listening to the old man's stories while Patricia and Stephen sent cards at Christmas if they remembered. They'd only started calling when the rumors of George's failing health began circulating 18 months ago, suddenly interested in the eccentric uncle they'd spent decades ignoring. James Smith adjusted wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat with the practiced formality of a man who'd delivered bad news to disappointed relatives more times than he cared to count. The will, he explained, had been drafted in September 2023, merely 6 weeks before George's death at the age of 106. To my sister-in-law, Patricia White Smith, read in a voice dry as ancient paper, "I leave my portfolio of commercial real estate in Manhattan, along with liquid assets held in the First National Trust." Patricia exhaled through her nose, a sound of satisfaction barely contained behind decades of practiced refinement. To my grandnephew Stephen White, "I leave my shares in the Technology Syndicate, as well as my collection of vintage automobiles currently stored in climate-controlled facilities in Poughkeepsie." Stephen's smirk was immediate, reflexive, the expression of someone who'd just won a game he'd been playing in his head for years. Smith paused, glancing up at Jennifer with something that might have been pity if lawyers were capable of such unguarded emotion. "And to my grandniece, Jennifer Williams, I leave White Oak Farm in its entirety, including all structures, acreage, and everything contained within the property, boundaries from the sky above to the bedrock below." The silence that followed had weight and texture thick enough to choke on. Stephen's laugh came first, sharp and brutal, the kind of sound that draws blood without touching skin. White Oak Farm. That rotting monument to failure in the middle of nowhere? He shook his head, the gesture exaggerated for Jennifer's benefit. Congratulations, cousin. You just inherited a money pit that hasn't seen maintenance since Reagan's first term. Patricia placed a manicured hand on her pearls, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. Oh, Jennifer, dear, if you need assistance with demolition costs, Stephen and I might be able to arrange a small loan, at fair interest rates naturally. Jennifer said nothing. Words felt impossible, trapped somewhere between her chest and throat. She signed the paperwork where Smith indicated, accepted a heavy ring of iron keys that smelled like rust and abandonment, and walked out into the November cold with the sure knowledge that she'd just inherited exactly what Stephen said, a worthless burden that would drag her further into debt. The parking lot was empty except for her battered Honda Civic and Stephen's Mercedes. She was halfway to her car when she heard Stephen's voice, low and conversational, drifting through the office's half-open window. Let her struggle for 2 months, he was saying to Patricia. When she defaults on the property tax, we'll buy the lien for pennies. County'll foreclose. We'll take the land cheap. Father should have inherited that property anyway before he... Jennifer didn't wait to hear the rest. She drove away with her hands shaking on the wheel, Stephen's words echoing in her skull like a prophecy she couldn't escape. The property tax bill Smith had mentioned in passing was $14,500, due February 8th. She had $520 in her bank account and no prospect of earning more. The farm wasn't salvation. It was a trap with a 3-month timer. 2 days later, Jennifer drove the winding mountain road that led to White Oak Farm, each turn revealing landscapes that might have been beautiful if she weren't calculating the dollar signs of her own ruin. The Catskills in November wore death like haute couture bare trees against gray sky, dead leaves thick on the ground, the smell of decay masquerading as natural transition. The farmhouse announced itself around the final bend like a corpse at a funeral, impossible to ignore and deeply uncomfortable to acknowledge. The Victorian structure sagged violently to the left, its spine broken by decades of harsh winters and deliberate neglect. Paint peeled in long, diseased strips, exposing wood gone soft with rot. The front porch looked ready to collapse under the weight of a strong wind, let alone human feet. The surrounding 60 acres were a wasteland of aggressive thorn bushes and dead thistles, land so depleted it couldn't support weeds with ambition. This was soil that had given up dirt, that had forgotten its purpose. Jennifer parked in the gravel driveway and sat for 5 full minutes before she could force herself to move. Inside was worse. The air hit her like a physical thing, thick with mildew and trapped dust, and the particular stench of abandonment. George had lived his final years in a single room on the ground floor, leaving the rest of the house to rot from the inside out. Newspapers from the 1980s formed unstable towers throughout the hallways, a maze of yellowed proclamations about events everyone had long since forgotten. Water stains bloomed across cracked plaster ceilings like maps of countries that existed only in nightmares. Jennifer dropped her duffel bag and sat on a wooden crate that might have once held apples or tools or hope. The sound of her own crying startled her harsh sobs that scraped her throat raw. This wasn't grief for George. She'd done that crying 6 weeks ago when the hospital called. This was pure exhaustion, the sound a body makes when it's been pushed beyond every reasonable limit and then shoved a little further just to see what breaking actually looks like. She'd left Chicago with nothing. Now she owned 60 acres of nothing, which somehow felt like less than she'd started with. The first week passed in a blur of desperate activity. Jennifer scrubbed floors until her knuckles bled, hauled garbage bags of George's hoarded possessions to the driveway, survived on canned soup heated over a camping stove because the electrical wiring was too compromised to trust. Her initial plan was simple: sell, quickly cut her losses, escape. She called 3 real estate agents. The first 2 refused to drive up the mountain once she described the property. The third, a weary-looking woman named Linda Brown, arrived in a practical sedan and walked the property line for exactly 15 minutes before delivering her verdict on the porch steps. The land's dead honey, chemical spill upriver in the 70s, leached into the groundwater. You can't farm it, can't develop it. The house is a tear-down, foundations cracked, probably down to bedrock. Honestly, you'd be lucky to get $25,000 for the whole lot, and finding a buyer could take years. Most folks who want rural property want working land, not toxic dirt and a Victorian corpse. $25,000 wouldn't clear half of Jennifer's bakery debt, let alone leave her with anything to rebuild her life. She was trapped in a nightmare with increasingly specific parameters. If she couldn't sell, she'd strip it. Every piece of copper piping, every slab of antique barnwood, every scrap of metal that architectural salvage yards in the city might buy. It was scavenger work, undignified and exhausting, but it was something. The massive stone barn behind the house seemed the logical starting point. The barn was older than the house built sometime in the late 1800s, when someone still believed this land had potential. Its roof had partially collapsed, pinning decades of debris under rotted shingles and moss thick as carpet. Jennifer spent an entire morning trying to shift a 300-pound oak beam with a crowbar she'd found in the garage, making exactly 0 progress and several new blisters. That's when Michael Johnson appeared, driving a yellow backhoe up the muddy path that separated her property from his. He was broad-shouldered and quiet, the kind of man who'd spent enough time alone that words felt expensive. His hands were calloused leather, his flannel shirt faded from 1,000 washes, his face weathered in the way that comes from outdoor work rather than recreational skiing. He killed the backhoe's engine and climbed down with the easy grace of someone who'd been operating heavy machinery since before Jennifer learned to drive. "You're George's grandniece," statement not questioned, delivered in a voice rough from disuse. Jennifer wiped sweat from her forehead, probably smearing dirt across her face in the process. Guilty as charged. He was a good man, kept to himself. Michael gestured at the barn. "You're not going to move that beam alone. I noticed. I can help. Low rate. Cash is fine." The offer felt too generous, which made Jennifer suspicious by instinct. Why, Michael looked at the farmhouse, something unreadable crossing his face. "Because I watched him live in that house for 30 years, and he never asked anyone for help once. Seems like you inherited that particular quality." Over the next 5 days, they fell into a rhythm. Michael operated the backhoe, dragging collapsed roof timbers into the pasture. Jennifer sorted through debris by hand, salvaging anything with resale value. Antique horseshoes, hand-forged iron hinges, slate tiles, sections of century-old chestnut that specialty builders would pay premium prices for. She sold the first load to an architectural salvage yard in Kingston for $3,800, which felt like winning the lottery and losing it simultaneously. At this rate, she'd need to strip mine the entire property to make the tax payment. On the 4th day, while organizing a stack of salvaged materials, Michael spoke without prompting. "I worked on this barn once, back in 2010. George hired me for a weekend to clear some debris from the collapsed section. Jennifer looked up, the northwest corner. Yeah. How'd you know? Michael pulled off his work gloves, studying them like they might contain answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. He paid me $500 to clear everything except one specific corner. Said I should leave that area untouched no matter what. When I asked why, he just said some things need to stay buried. Before Jennifer could respond, a courier van bumped up the driveway, incongruous in its clean efficiency against the backdrop of rural decay. The driver handed her an envelope, had her sign for it, and left without conversation. The return address was a law firm in New Paltz. Inside, legal documents with the kind of dense text that promised nothing good. Jennifer read the first page twice before the meaning penetrated. Stephen White had filed a lawsuit in Ulster County Superior Court. The claim George White was mentally incompetent when drafting his will. Evidence included photographs of the farmhouse squalor, testimony from townspeople who'd witnessed eccentric behavior, and medical expert opinion suggesting advanced dementia. The suit argued that Jennifer had unduly influenced George during childhood visits, grooming him to leave her the property. Court date, January 15th. Michael was watching her. Bad news. Jennifer's laugh came out wrong edges too sharp. My cousin wants to take the farm. He's claiming George was insane. Was he? The question was genuine, without judgment. Jennifer folded the papers with hands that wanted to shake, but refused. No. Eccentric, yes. Particular, absolutely. But George could quote Shakespeare and discuss the history of American whiskey production and explain the chemistry of sourdough fermentation, all in the same conversation. His mind was sharp until the day he died. Then prove it. That's the problem. How do you prove someone was sane when they chose to live like they were crazy? Michael picked up his gloves again, pulling them on with deliberate care, by finding out why he made that choice. That night, Jennifer couldn't sleep. The farmhouse was too quiet, too full of ghosts and questions. She wandered through George's bedroom, the one room he'd kept marginally functional, running her hands over surfaces thick with dust. The bed was a simple cot. The dresser held clothes worn thin from decades of use. The desk was oak-heavy, older than Jennifer's parents. She opened drawers methodically, finding reading glasses and old receipts, and a photograph that made her breath catch. Two young men stood in front of the barn, arms slung around each other's shoulders in the easy way of deep friendship. One was clearly George, younger, stronger before time had carved him down to essentials. The other man, she didn't recognize. Someone had written on the back in faded ink, J.W. and G.W., 1934, the partnership. Jennifer tucked the photo in her pocket and kept searching. The bottom drawer stuck when she tried to open it, wood swollen from moisture. She yanked hard enough to partially splinter the face, revealing a false bottom beneath the main drawer space. Her fingers found the edge pried up and discovered a compartment she'd bet Stephen and Patricia's lawyers didn't know existed. Inside lay a leather journal, smaller than the palm of her hand, filled with George's handwriting. But this wasn't a diary or memoir. This was a map. The pages contained hand-drawn diagrams of the property, compass bearings, cryptic notations. 60 paces northeast from the old well, under the guardian oak, beneath the north corner where the fox sleeps. Some of the notes referenced landmarks that didn't exist anymore or might never have existed at all. There were symbols she couldn't decipher, measurements in units she didn't recognize. Jennifer sat on the floor and read the entire thing 3 times, her heart doing complicated mathematics in her chest. This was either evidence of George's careful planning or proof of his dementia, and she couldn't tell which interpretation would destroy her faster. She showed Michael the journal the next morning, watching his face as he turned the pages with fingers too large for the delicate paper. "This isn't rambling." His voice was certain. George was an engineer before he became a hermit, worked for the county surveyor's office in the 50s. This is deliberate documentation of what Michael traced one of the diagrams with a calloused fingertip, something he buried, something he wanted found eventually, but only by someone patient enough to decode the map. Jennifer thought about Stephen's lawsuit, about the property tax deadline, about the photograph of George and the unknown man, labeled JW. The pieces weren't connecting yet, but they were circling each other like sharks scenting blood. "Can we decode it?" Michael looked at the barn, at the section he'd been paid to avoid 15 years ago. "I think we already started." The next 3 days were an exercise in controlled frustration. They tried interpreting 60 paces northeast from the old well, which should have been straightforward, except there were 3 different foundations on the property that might have been wells, and northeast turned out to be subjective, depending on where you started measuring. The metal detector Michael borrowed from a neighbor hit on everything because the farm was apparently built on a foundation of discarded metal scrap. Under the guardian oak proved more fruitful. Once, Michael remembered the local nickname for the massive white oak tree that had stood near the barn until it was cut down in 1990 after lightning damage. He showed Jennifer a photograph from the Town Historical Society. The tree had been enormous, its canopy wide enough to shade half the barn. Beneath the north corner, where the fox sleeps, made sudden sense when Michael recalled the fox den he'd seen in 2010, precisely in the barn's foundation corner that George had paid him not to disturb. They were close. Jennifer could feel it the way you feel weather-changing pressure building in the air before a storm breaks. On the 3rd night, she received a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it. A friend." She showed it to Michael. He read it twice, then handed back her phone without comment. "Stephen?" she asked. "Or someone Stephen hired? Or someone who doesn't want you finding what George buried?" Michael started his truck. "Either way, we're working tonight." They began at 11 p.m. when the mountain road was empty and the nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Michael operated the backhoe by portable floodlight, the machine's engine sounding obscenely loud in the November stillness. Jennifer stood watch-eyes scanning the driveway for headlights that might signal discovery. The excavation point was exactly where Michael had been forbidden to work in 2010, the barn's north corner, where foundation stone met earth in a marriage of human ambition and natural resistance. 4 feet down, the backhoe's bucket hit something that made a sound metal shouldn't make against dirt. Michael killed the engine immediately. The silence that followed felt aggressive, pressing in from all sides. He jumped down with a shovel, and Jennifer grabbed another from the truck bed. They dug by hand, working frantically as the first drops of rain began to fall. Jennifer's shovel struck first, the impact vibrating up through the wooden handle into her arms, with enough force to rattle her teeth. She cleared away mud with gloved hands, revealing metal underneath. Not rusted scrap, not an old pipe, something else entirely. Michael dropped to his knees beside her, using both hands to sweep away the remaining soil. The rain was falling harder now, turning their excavation into a muddy soup, but neither of them stopped. The object revealed itself in sections like a truth told in installments. First, the curve too perfect to be natural, too large to be anything simple. Then the material steel, oxidized orange from decades underground, but intact in a way that suggested military engineering. Finally, the full shape, a circular door 6 feet across, set horizontally into the earth and surrounded by a perimeter of poured concrete. Jennifer sat back on her heels, rain plastering her hair to her skull, breath coming hard. This wasn't a septic tank. This wasn't a cistern or root cellar or any of the mundane things that got buried under old farms. The center of the door featured a wheel-style locking mechanism, the kind she'd seen in photographs of submarine hatches. Secured to the wheel was a padlock, the size of her fist, rusted but fundamentally sound. Michael ran his hand over the steel, tracing the rivets that held sections together. Ordnance-grade construction, mid-century, probably 40s or 50s. You don't bury something like this unless you're hiding it from bombs or people. Can we open it? The question hung in the rain-thick air between them. Michael looked at her, really looked, his face unreadable in the harsh wash of the floodlight. We should call the county. If this is a sealed toxic waste site. Number. Jennifer's voice came out harder than she'd intended. No police, no county, no officials. If Stephen finds out we discovered something down here, he'll claim it in the lawsuit. We open it first, secure whatever's inside, then deal with authorities. Jennifer, Michael's tone carried warning. If you open an unknown underground structure, you could release hazardous gas. Chemical storage from the 70s. People buried all kinds of illegal waste back then. She thought about the text message, thought about Stephen's smug face in the lawyer's office, thought about George living alone in squalor for 30 years while sitting on real estate worth millions in Manhattan. George wouldn't bury poison. He buried protection. Please. Her voice cracked on the word. Triple your daily rate. Just cut the lock. Michael held her gaze for a long moment, rain running off the brim of his cap in small rivers. Then he nodded and went to retrieve his generator. The angle grinder's shriek was apocalyptic sparks showering into the mud like violent fireworks. The hardened steel padlock resisted for 20 full minutes. Michael burning through 2 cutting discs before the lock finally gave way with a metallic clank that felt like victory and dread combined. He attached a pry bar to the wheel spokes. Jennifer grabbed the opposite side. On 3, Michael said, push. They threw their combined weight against the mechanism. Nothing moved. The wheel had been locked in position for so long that rust and time had fused it into permanence. Again, Michael commanded, push harder. The second attempt produced a sound like an animal dying metal grinding against itself in protest. The wheel shifted 1 inch, then 2, then suddenly rotated with grinding resistance until it locked into the open position. A pressurized hiss erupted from the door's seal, blowing a cloud of ancient dust up into their faces. Jennifer stumbled backward, coughing, expecting toxic fumes or chemical burn. Instead, the air that escaped smelled sweet in a way that made no sense. Woody and thick with notes of vanilla and something else she couldn't immediately place. Fermented, alcoholic, the scent of damp earth mixing with aged spirits. Michael hooked a chain from the backhoe to the door's handle. The machine groaned, taking the weight, and the massive steel hatch pivoted upward on hinges that protested but held. Beneath lay a throat of absolute darkness, a square opening descending into the earth like the mouth of something ancient and patient. Michael aimed his tactical flashlight down the LED beam, cutting through floating dust motes. The light revealed a concrete staircase spiral in design, descending far deeper than any root cellar had business going. The walls were brick professional masonry work. Copper wiring ran along the ceiling in conduits that suggested electrical infrastructure. "This isn't a storage pit." Jennifer's voice sounded strange in her own ears. "This is a facility." Michael turned to face her, rain dripping from his nose. "Last chance to back out. Once we go down there, we can't unknow what we find." Jennifer looked back at the farmhouse, dark and sagging against the night sky. She thought about her empty bank account, about Stephen's lawsuit, about George living like a pauper while sitting on top of what her grandmother used to say the only way out is through, which had seemed like meaningless platitude until this exact moment. "Turn on the flashlights." Her voice didn't shake. "We're going in." The descent felt like entering a cathedral built for a religion Jennifer didn't understand. 50 steps spiraling down, each one solid concrete, despite decades of abandonment. The air grew thicker with each step, that strange sweet smell intensifying. Not toxic, not decay, something preserved. At the bottom, another door, iron. This time riveted and heavy, standing partially ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry and forgotten to seal it properly behind them. Beyond lay darkness so complete it seemed to have texture. Michael found a breaker box mounted on the brick wall, decades of spider webs shrouding it like deliberate camouflage. "There's wiring here, if it's still connected to anything worth trying." He ran the extension cord from the generator. Above, splicing the feed directly into the ancient panel with electrical pliers, while Jennifer stood in the darkness, listening to her own breathing and wondering what choice she'd just made that couldn't be unmade. "Brace yourself." Michael's hand found the heavy iron lever. "If this shorts, we're going to see fireworks." He pulled. The sound was mechanical thunder relays clicking in sequence like a firing squad finding rhythm. The generator above surged, bearing a load it hadn't been designed for. Deep within the chamber, something woke up after decades of sleep. The lights came on. Row by row, massive Edison bulbs flickered to reluctant life, casting warm amber illumination across a space that defied every assumption Jennifer had brought down the stairs. The vault was the size of a football field, held aloft by soaring brick arches and steel I-beams that belonged in a subway tunnel. The ceiling rose 20 feet overhead. The air was cool, precisely climate-controlled, despite the lack of obvious machinery. But the architecture wasn't what stole Jennifer's breath. It was the contents. Stretching into the distance were thousands upon thousands of wooden racks, stacked 4 tiers high in rows, precise as a library. But they didn't hold books or boxes or any of the mundane things people typically stored underground. Instead, each rack cradled massive glass vessels, demijohns her brain supplied from some half-remembered article about traditional winemaking. 5-gallon capacity, each one sealed with thick red wax and stamped with a brass seal. The liquid inside caught the amber light and threw it back, transformed, glowing like captured sunlight, like honey, like gold in its most essential liquid form. Michael walked down the central aisle as if pulled by invisible threads, his work boots ringing against the metal grating of the floor. He stopped at the nearest rack, reached up, and carefully wiped dust from one of the wax seals. Jennifer joined him, reading the inscription stamped into the brass, White Oak Legacy Rye, distilled 1924. bottled 1932. Her voice came out as a whisper. Prohibition whiskey. Michael pulled out his phone fingers moving across the screen with unusual urgency. He held it up, showing her a Wikipedia article about Prohibition-era spirits. 1920 to 33. The Volstead Act made production, sale, and transport of alcohol illegal, but people kept making it anyway, especially the good stuff. He gestured at the endless rows. Your great-great-grandfather was running an illegal distillery. In the far corner of the vault, a glass-walled office sat on a raised iron platform. They climbed the metal stairs together, Jennifer's legs shaking from adrenaline or exhaustion or the weight of discovery. Inside the office, a mahogany desk dominated the space, flanked by green glass banker's lamps and a rotary telephone that hadn't connected to anything in at least 4 decades. On the desk, centered precisely on the leather blotter, sat a thick, leather-bound ledger. On top of the ledger rested an envelope sealed with wax and addressed in handwriting Jennifer recognized from the map, to the one who digs. She broke the brittle seal and unfolded yellowed pages, George's final words waiting 90 years to be read. Jennifer's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter, George's handwriting cramped and urgent across pages that crackled with age. Michael stood beside her close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his rain-soaked jacket, both of them reading in the amber glow of the banker's lamps. If you're reading this, I am dead, and you have inherited the weight of the White name. My father, Jonathan White, built this vault in 1924 when the Volstead Act transformed his livelihood from respectable trade to federal crime. He was the finest distiller in New York State, but he committed one fatal error, partnering with Enzo Costello's syndicate to distribute his product across the eastern seaboard. Costello wanted more than partnership. He wanted the recipe, the vault location, complete control. When Father refused to surrender the keys, Costello's men cut the brake lines on his truck. June 14, 1934. I was 17 years old. I found him in the ravine off Route 23, still warm. I knew they would come for me next. So that same night, I sealed this vault, buried the entrance, let the farm decay around me. For 89 years, I played the role of mad hermit, so convincing that even my own family believed it. I lived in filth, so the Costellos would believe the White Fortune was mythology. They forgot. I never did. This whiskey is my father's blood-made liquid. Protect it. But Jennifer and I know it's you reading this because Stephen lacks patience and Patricia lacks curiosity. Protect it differently than I did. Don't sacrifice everything that makes life worth living just to guard what's already dead. I'm leaving this to you because you understand that quality cannot be rushed. Your bakery failed not from lack of skill, but from refusal to compromise standards for profit. That's integrity, and integrity is the only currency that matters when protecting legacy. The whiskey will test you. Greed will come for it wearing family faces. Power will threaten you with legal violence, but you have something I never did the capacity to trust. Find Anna. Make it right. The legacy belongs to both of you. Don't repeat my mistakes. The whiskey will last another century. Your life won't. George White, September 2023. Jennifer read the final line 3 times, each repetition hitting differently. Michael moved away, giving her space for whatever reaction she couldn't control, his boots echoing on the metal platform as he examined the office's other contents. There's more. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone trying not to influence a discovery. Desk drawers locked, but the keys on George's ring. Jennifer pulled the key ring from her pocket fingers, finding the smallest key by touch. The drawer opened with a resistance that suggested decades of disuse, revealing 5 leather journals stacked with archaeological precision. Each one was labeled with a single year, 1955, 1970, 1985, 2000, 2015. She opened the first journal, George's younger handwriting, filling pages with observations that read like confessions delivered to a priest who'd never absolve him. The 1955 entry was dated June 14th, 21 years to the day after Jonathan's murder. George had been 38 already, living alone on the farm, already constructing the hermit persona that would define his next 6 decades. The state police called it brake failure, mechanical wear, they wrote in their report. But I saw the cut marks on the line before they hauled the truck away. Clean cuts, precise as surgery. I was too young and too terrified to demand a real investigation. 3 days after the funeral, 2 men in expensive suits came to the farm. They offered $500 for the property. When I refused, they burned the east field, killed our dog, left a note saying fire was unpredictable in old barns, that accidents happened to stubborn people. I was 17 and alone, and so scared I couldn't sleep for a month. But I was also Jonathan White's son, and he'd taught me that some things matter more than comfort. That night, I sealed the vault. Took me 3 days of work filling in the excavation building, a false floor, planting weeds that would make the ground look undisturbed. Then I started playing crazy, stopped bathing regularly, let the house fall apart, talked to myself in town, became someone so pathetic that even the Costellos lost interest. Jennifer closed the journal, her throat tight. Michael had moved to the ledger, turning pages with careful fingers. There's an inventory here. He held up the ledger so she could see columns of numbers in George's meticulous handwriting. 11,247 demijohns, each one cataloged by distillation date, barrel number, bottling date. Your great-great-grandfather was running a commercial operation. How much is it worth? Michael pulled out his phone, typing with one hand. Pre-Prohibition whiskey sells for $5,000 to $50,000 per bottle, depending on rarity and condition. But I can't find any record of 5-gallon demijohns ever coming to market. These might be unique. He did more calculations, his expression shifting from concentration to something like disbelief. Jennifer, if each demijohn is worth even the low end, you're standing in somewhere between $50 and $100 million. The number was too large to process abstract as astronomical distances. Jennifer opened the second journal, 1970, and found George's handwriting grown more confident, but no less lonely. I met Margaret Wilson at the county library. She asked me about a book on local history, and I found myself talking to her for 3 hours. She's kind and patient and sees past the hermit costume I wear. I think I love her. I know I can't have her. The Costellos have long memories, and Vincent Costello Sr. is still alive, in New York, still connected, still dangerous. Better Margaret thinks I'm strange than buries me because of my stupidity. The 1985 journal opened to a page marked with a faded ribbon, and Jennifer's breath stopped. I have a daughter. Her name is Anna, born February 14th, 1972, to Diane King, a woman I met during a brief period when I thought perhaps the danger had passed, when Vincent Sr. had retired and the syndicate seemed focused elsewhere. I was 55 and lonely, and so desperate for human connection that I convinced myself I could have a normal life. Anna was 3 days old when Vincent Costello Jr. appeared at the hospital. He didn't threaten explicitly, just stood by the nursery window and said, "Cute baby. Your father learned the hard way what happens when whites forget their place. Would be a shame if history repeated." I left Diane that night, changed my listed name on local records to George Whitaker, became even more of a ghost. I've sent money every month through a lawyer, $850,000 over 13 years. But I've never seen Anna's face except in photographs Diane sends. My daughter hates me. She has every right. But what Jennifer didn't know yet was that George had left her more than a farm. He'd left her a test one that would reveal whether she had the patience and perseverance her great-uncle had spent his entire life cultivating. Michael's voice cut through her reading. The ledger has a note in the margin. Says there's evidence hidden in the north wall, brick 247. Evidence about what Jennifer kept reading, moving to the 2000 journal. The entry was dated March 17th. My brother Thomas called today. He was crying, which I've never heard before. .com bubble burst. His investments collapsed. He needs $200,000 or he'll lose everything. I have 10 times that amount in hidden accounts, money from selling off Manhattan properties, slowly, carefully through shell corporations that can't be traced to Costello watch lists. But pulling $200,000 out would create a pattern trigger alerts with people who still remember the white name and wonder if the old stories about Jonathan's vault were true. I told Thomas no. He hung up cursing me. 3 days later, Patricia called to tell me he'd hanged himself in their garage. Stephen found the body. My nephew hates me. My sister-in-law blames me. They're both correct in their assessment. I chose whiskey over blood protection over family. History will judge whether that makes me guardian or coward. The final journal, 2015, was less than half full. George's handwriting growing shaky in places, but still fundamentally coherent. The last entry was dated September 20th, 2023, 6 weeks before his death. I've watched Jennifer Williams from a distance since she was born. Thomas's granddaughter, inheritor of the family stubbornness without the family cruelty. She opened a bakery that made bread the way Jonathan made whiskey, with patience, with refusal to compromise quality for profit, with understanding that good things take time. The bakery failed because the market rewards speed over substance. But failure isn't weakness, it's education. Stephen is entitled and cruel. Patricia is bitter and grasping. Neither can protect what matters. Jennifer can if she chooses to. I'm leaving her the farm. If she's worthy, she'll dig. If she finds the vault, she'll understand that the greatest treasures aren't handed to you on silver platters. They're buried in mud, waiting for someone willing to sacrifice comfort for something that outlasts them. But I'm also leaving her a burden. Find Anna. The legacy belongs to both of you. I failed my daughter by choosing protection over presence. Jennifer can succeed where I failed if she has the courage. Jennifer closed the journal and sat in the office chair, George's ghost practically visible in the amber light. Michael had moved to the vault's north wall, counting bricks with his flashlight. Found it. Brick 247's loose. He worked it free, revealing a hollow space behind. Inside was a metal box, waterproofed and sealed. Jennifer crossed the vault floor, each step feeling like walking through history that refused to stay buried. Michael handed her the box without opening it, letting her make the choice. Inside lay documentation that transformed speculation into evidence. A private investigator's report from 1934, complete with photographs showing Jonathan White's truck and the brake line cut so cleanly it could only be intentional. A letter from Enzo Costello, dated May 1934. Last offer, White. Sell me the operation or face consequences. State Police accident report stamped suspicious but unprosecuted. And beneath it all, a 1925 document on aged paper, what appeared to be a partnership agreement between Enzo Costello and Jonathan White. 50-50 split on all production and profits. This could prove partnership was coerced. Michael examined the signature, but it also proves partnership existed. Jennifer's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking, exhaustion making her careless. The voice on the other end was female, tired, carrying the weight of complicated decisions. Is this Jennifer Williams speaking? My name is Anna King. I'm George White's daughter. I think we need to talk. The call lasted 17 minutes. Jennifer sat on the vault floor, back against brick that had witnessed 90 years of secrets and learned that her great-uncle's story was more complicated than any journal could capture. Anna King Morrison was 52, a high school English teacher in Albany. Her mother Diane had died in 2010, taking most of George's secrets to the grave, but leaving enough truth that Anna spent years assembling pieces of a father she'd met exactly once. I was 18. He gave me $10,000 for college and told me to forget he existed. Very hard to forget someone who sends monthly checks totaling $850,000 over 40 years while refusing every attempt at contact. Anna's voice carried bitterness, aged to perfection, smooth and sharp simultaneously. When my mother was dying, she told me the truth, that my father wasn't absent by choice, but by terror, that men had threatened me as an infant, that George loved me enough to disappear completely. I hated him for that. Still do, partly, but hate and love aren't mutually exclusive. Are they? Jennifer found her voice. George left me his farm. I found his journals. The last entry says to find you that the legacy belongs to both of us. Silence stretched across the line. Then Anna laughed, the sound carrying zero humor. That's interesting timing, because 2 weeks ago, a man named Anthony Wilson contacted me. Said he's Enzo Costello's grandson. Claimed his grandfather was Jonathan White's business partner, entitled to 50% of all production. Jennifer's hand tightened on the phone. What did he want? He offered me $100,000 to testify that George was mentally unstable, to help my cousin Stephen invalidate the will. He said the farm's worthless anyway, that I'd be smart to take cash over sentiment. The vault's Edison bulbs hummed in the silence that followed. Michael was watching Jennifer's face, reading disaster in her expression. What did you say? Jennifer forced the question out. I said yes. Anna's voice was flat. My daughter needs surgery we can't afford. $100,000 would cover it. I'm not proud, but I'm practical. Jennifer closed her eyes. So you're testifying against me in Stephen's lawsuit. I was. Past tense. Anna's tone shifted, something harder entering it. But then you called, and I did research. George White owned Manhattan real estate worth millions. My cousin Stephen inherited tech shares. You inherited a farm everyone calls worthless. which means either George was crazy or he was protecting something valuable enough to bury. So which is it, cousin? Did our great-uncle leave you garbage, or did he leave you a test? The question hung crystalline in the underground air. Jennifer looked at the endless rows of demijohns, liquid gold, captured in glass, 90 years of patience made visible. He left me both, and he left it to you too. She told Anna everything: the vault, the whiskey, the estimated value, George's letters, the journals, the evidence of murder and coercion. She explained Stephen's lawsuit, the property tax deadline, the anonymous threats. And then she made an offer that would have seemed insane 24 hours ago. Come to the farm this weekend. See it yourself. If you verify it's real, I'll split everything 50-50. $40 to $50 million, Anna. Not 100,000. Why would you do that? Anna's voice was careful, testing for traps. Because George wanted me to. Because you're his daughter. Because legacy means nothing if it's built on the same isolation that destroyed him. Jennifer surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. And because it's right. Anna was quiet for a long time. I need to think about it. But Jennifer, if you're lying, if this is some scheme to manipulate me into helping your lawsuit, I'm not. Come Saturday, bring your family, see for yourself. After the call ended, Michael helped Jennifer catalog the vault's contents. The work was meditative, moving from rack to rack, verifying each demijohn against George's ledger. The numbers aligned perfectly. 11,247 bottles of Prohibition-era whiskey, each one sealed at the precise moment its aging reached perfection, preserved in glass, that arrested time. But Jennifer needed more than inventory. She needed immediate cash, and she needed it before Stephen's lawsuit could freeze the asset. Timothy Clark arrived Saturday night, driving up the mountain in a Range Rover that seemed offended by the rural setting. He was 48, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that cost more than Jennifer's car. Michael had vouched for him. Timothy was the rare antiquities dealer who'd built a reputation on discretion rather than publicity. His reaction to the vault was everything Jennifer had hoped for. He stood at the top of the stairs staring at the Edison-lit cathedral of whiskey and went completely silent for 90 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was reverent. Mike, the White Oak legacy. I thought it was industry mythology. He insisted on authentication before discussing business. Jennifer and Michael carefully extracted one demijohn from a center rack, carrying it to George's desk like priests handling holy relics. Timothy produced a heated scalpel from his leather case, breaking the wax seal with surgical precision. He drew exactly 1 ounce with a glass pipette, transferred it to a crystal tasting glass. The aroma filled the office immediately: caramel and charred oak, dark cherry, and leather tobacco, and vanilla, and something underneath that Jennifer couldn't name but recognized as complexity beyond her experience. Timothy swirled the glass, nosed it with eyes closed, then sipped. He stood perfectly still for a full minute, the whiskey moving across his palate, revealing layers. When he opened his eyes, they were bright with something between greed and genuine appreciation. This is flawless. The glass preservation arrested oxidation at the exact optimal moment. This is the finest American rye I have ever encountered. At Sotheby's, with proper cataloging and provenance documentation, this collection could bring $100 to $120 million over 18 months. I have 3 weeks before property tax forecloses the farm. Jennifer kept her voice level. I need immediate cash. Timothy smiled, and Jennifer recognized the expression of someone who'd just found leverage. I represent a private syndicate. I can purchase 4 demijohns right now for $600,000, plus 15% commission on all future auction sales, for which I'll secure exclusive rights. Not enough. Jennifer surprised herself with the negotiation. I need $800,000 to be safe. Then we'll hold a sealed bid auction. Timothy pulled out his phone. I can have 2 competing buyers here tomorrow for private viewing. You'll get market rate, maybe better. Sunday afternoon brought Paul Moore from London and Scott Hill from Dubai. Both men wealthy enough that discussing specific dollar amounts seemed gauche. Jennifer gave them a 2-hour window, watching 3 collectors circle her great-great-grandfather's work like sharks evaluating prey. The sealed bids came in at 6 p.m. Timothy at $650,000, Paul at $700,000, Scott at $850,000. Jennifer accepted Scott's offer. Catherine Hill, the lawyer who'd agreed to defend Jennifer pro bono in Stephen's lawsuit, drafted a contract on the spot. Jennifer retained ownership of the remaining 11,243 demijohns. Scott received first option on all future sales at fair market rate. If he declined within 24 months, Jennifer could auction elsewhere. The wire transfer hit Jennifer's account Monday morning, $850,000 minus Scott's immediate 10% deposit held in escrow. 4 demijohns loaded into an armored transport disappeared down the mountain road. Anna arrived Sunday afternoon while the auction was still in progress. Jennifer heard the car before she saw it, a practical sedan that announced its driver had neither wealth to flaunt nor poverty to hide. Anna stepped out wearing jeans and a sweater, her face carrying George's bone structure, but none of his practiced isolation. She looked at the farmhouse, the barn, the land that had consumed her father's entire life. Then she looked at Jennifer. "Show me." The descent into the vault was silent except for footsteps on concrete. Anna stopped at the bottom of the stairs, taking in the Edison bulbs, the brick arches, the endless rows of glass, catching light and transforming it to gold. She walked to the nearest rack, read the brass seal, then turned to Jennifer with tears streaming down her face. "He protected this for 89 years. Her voice broke on the numbers. "For me, for you, for liquid in glass bottles, for legacy." Jennifer moved to stand beside her, for the belief that some things matter more than one lifetime, for the hope that eventually someone patient enough would dig deep enough to understand. Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm withdrawing from Anthony Wilson's deal. I'm testifying for you in Stephen's lawsuit. And I'm accepting your offer. 50-50 partners." They shook hands in the amber light, 2 women connected by blood and whiskey, and the complicated ghost of a man who'd sacrificed everything to protect something he'd never lived to see secured. The emergency injunction arrived Tuesday morning via certified mail. Ulster County Environmental Protection Agency, acting on anonymous complaint. Jennifer would bet her remaining demijohns that Stephen had made that call was placing White Oak Farm under quarantine, pending investigation of underground contamination. No access permitted until EPA inspection cleared the site. Violation would result in immediate arrest. 2 inspectors arrived with Sheriff Donald Thomas 90 minutes later. The lead inspector was Brian Thompson, a county environmental officer who'd clearly drawn the short straw for mountain visits. Stephen stood beside his car at the property line, arms crossed, smile predatory. Brian walked to the barn area, noted the filled excavation from the previous week. What's buried here? Jennifer had prepared for this moment. Old septic system. We excavated and properly capped it last week. I need to verify that. Brian pulled out ground-penetrating radar equipment. If there's an unpermitted underground structure, there's a permit. Michael appeared from the farmhouse carrying paperwork that looked official because he'd spent Sunday night making it so. Filed with County Thursday. Septic abandonment permit number SK-2024-1847. Brian checked his laptop, fingers moving across keys. The permit existed because Michael had hacked the county database at 3 a.m., inserting a backdated filing that would pass casual inspection. Michael had learned these skills working construction, where cutting corners meant knowing which corners to cut and which records to manufacture. Permits in order. Brian closed his laptop. No violation, but if we receive additional complaints, you'll need a court order. Catherine Hill emerged from her car professional in a way that made the EPA inspectors remember they were on private property without explicit authority. My client is in compliance with all environmental regulations. Stephen's face went through several interesting transformations before settling on controlled rage. This isn't finished, Jennifer. Court date is January 15th. I'll prove George was insane, you manipulated him, and this farm should be mine. After they left, Michael spent 2 days installing a false floor over the vault entrance. He built a cosmetic concrete slab designed to look like a sealed septic tank, complete with utility markings and stamped dates that matched his forged permit. The actual entrance remained underneath accessible only by removing 3 specific sections of the false floor in the correct sequence. Jennifer's security cameras, another Michael installation, caught Gary Young, Stephen's lawyer, prowling the barn area at 2 a.m. Wednesday. The footage was grainy but clear enough for facial recognition, showing Gary photographing the site from multiple angles, taking measurements, making notes. They're building their case. Catherine reviewed the footage Friday morning. We need to build ours faster. Jennifer spent the next 2 weeks assembling evidence that George White was mentally competent when he drafted his will. The journals proved organized thinking across decades. Financial records showed George paid every bill on time for 50 years, managed multiple bank accounts, maintained correspondence with lawyers about property taxes and liability insurance. Dr. Edward Harris, the town doctor, provided a notarized statement certifying he'd examined George in June 2022 and found him cognitively sound, scoring 28 out of 30 on the mini mental state exam. Margaret Wilson agreed to testify. The 78-year-old woman who'd loved George from a distance provided a deposition describing conversations about philosophy, history, literature discussions that demonstrated sharp mental faculties until months before his death. But Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks before trial, everything changed. Catherine called at 4 p.m., her voice tight with controlled panic. Jennifer, we have a problem. Anthony Wilson just filed an intervention in your case, What does that mean? It means he's claiming legal interest in the estate. He's presented a 1925 partnership agreement between Enzo Costello and Jonathan White. 50-50 split on all whiskey production and profits. If the document's authentic, he owns half of everything in that vault. Jennifer sat down hard on the farmhouse steps. George's letter had mentioned partnership. The evidence box contained what looked like a draft agreement, but she'd assumed it was coercion, not legitimate business. The document exists. Catherine's voice carried the weight of legal disaster. We have 72 hours to authenticate it or file objection. Jennifer returned to the vault that night with Michael, both of them moving through the now familiar descent with the muscle memory of repetition. She went straight to the north wall, counting bricks from the corner. Brick number 247 was already loose from their previous excavation. Behind it, the metal box held documents they'd only glanced at before the private investigator's report, the photographs, the threatening letter. And beneath those, the 1925 partnership agreement that George had kept as evidence. Jennifer pulled it out carefully, examining it under the office's banker lamps. The paper was authentic period stock. The signatures looked legitimate. The notary seal appeared properly executed. But George had written in the journal that this was evidence the partnership was forged, evidence that Brick 247 held proof. She turned the document over, held it up to the light, searching for anything that would reveal forgery. Nothing obvious presented itself. Michael was examining the private investigator's report. "There's a note here. Says the investigator obtained samples of both men's signatures from bank documents. Enzo's signature on the partnership agreement doesn't match his signature on loan applications from 1924. Jennifer compared them side by side. The differences were subtle. Pressure variations, slight tremors in the partnership signature that suggested tracing rather than confident signing. "We need an expert. Catherine can hire a forensic document examiner." By Saturday, Dr. Cynthia Lewis had been retained, brought up from New York City at considerable expense. She spent 6 hours examining the partnership agreement under magnification UV light chemical analysis. Her preliminary report arrived Sunday evening. The paper is authentic, 1920s stock. The ink is period correct, iron gall formulation. However, signature analysis reveals Jonathan White's signature shows uniform pressure, consistent with tracing rather than natural signing variation. Enzo Costello's signature displays hesitation marks not present in authenticated samples from the same time period. Most significantly, the notary seal references Thomas Morrison, Albany County, a notary who did not exist in New York State records in 1925. The document is a sophisticated forgery, likely created recently using vintage materials and expert technique. Jennifer read the report 3 times, relief and rage mixing, until she couldn't separate them. Anthony Wilson had fabricated evidence, bought vintage paper on the black market, hired a forger skilled enough to fool casual inspection. But Dr. Lewis had caught it. And the evidence in Brick 247. The real partnership document, the investigator's report. The photographs of cut brake lines proved that even if partnership had existed, it was obtained through criminal coercion. Catherine filed their response. Tuesday morning, the Costello family murdered Jonathan White in 1934. Any alleged partnership was procured through violence and intimidation. Under New York law, contracts obtained through criminal duress are void from inception. Furthermore, forensic analysis proves the presented document is a modern forgery. Trial was set for January 15th. Jennifer had evidence had Anna as ally had $850,000 in the bank. She'd paid the property tax bill $14,500 that felt simultaneously enormous and trivial, with a certified check hand-delivered to the county clerk. The farm was secure from tax foreclosure, but Stephen's lawsuit and Anthony's intervention remained two legal threats circling like wolves waiting for weakness. The night before trial, Jennifer sat alone in the vault, surrounded by 11,243 bottles of whiskey that had waited 90 years to matter. She held George's final journal, reading his last words again. "Don't repeat my mistakes. The whiskey will last another century. Your life won't. Make it count." She thought about legacy and loneliness, about protection and sacrifice, about the difference between guarding something and being imprisoned by it. George had been both guardian and prisoner protector and victim of his own devotion. Jennifer could choose differently, would choose differently. The whiskey was valuable, yes, but Anna was family. Michael was partnership. Margaret was connection to George's humanity. Catherine was trust. Even Timothy and Scott represented belief that good work deserved recognition. George had died alone, surrounded by wealth that brought him no comfort. Jennifer would not inherit that particular curse along with his fortune. She turned off the vault lights, climbed the stairs, sealed the entrance behind its false floor. Above ground, Michael was waiting in the farmhouse kitchen with coffee and company, two things more valuable than any liquid in any bottle. Tomorrow, they would go to court. Tomorrow, they would face Stephen's accusations and Anthony's forgery, and the full weight of legal machinery designed to separate her from what George had protected. But tonight, she was not alone, and that made all the difference between legacy worth having and fortune that consumed its guardian. Ulster County Courthouse occupied a limestone building that had witnessed a century of human grievance distilled into legal argument. Jennifer entered through security at 8:30 a.m. Catherine beside her carrying two briefcases heavy with documentation. Anna followed with her husband Mark, their presence a silent statement about which side of the family divide they'd chosen. The courtroom smelled like furniture polish and anxiety, wooden pews filled with spectators who'd come for entertainment disguised as civic duty. Stephen sat at the plaintiff's table with Gary Young, both men wearing expressions of confidence that made Jennifer's stomach tighten. Patricia occupied the front row behind them, her face carved from ice and old resentment. Judge Pamela Scott entered at 9 sharp, her black robe and iron-gray hair, suggesting someone who'd spent decades separating truth from performance. She settled into the bench with the efficiency of a woman who valued time more than ceremony. We're here for White versus Williams estate contest with intervention by Wilson. Mr. Young, you filed first. Present your case. Gary stood smoothing his tie with the theatrical precision of someone who'd practiced the gesture. Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of testamentary capacity. George White was mentally incompetent when he drafted his will on September the 20th, 2023. We have photographic evidence of deplorable living conditions, witness testimony regarding bizarre behavior, and medical expert opinion indicating cognitive decline consistent with advanced dementia. He projected photographs onto a screen, the farmhouse in its squalor rooms filled with hoarded newspapers, broken furniture, non-functional plumbing. The images were damning, each one reinforcing the narrative of a mind unraveling. Furthermore, the beneficiary, Jennifer Williams, visited Mr. White with suspicious frequency during the final decade of his life. We contend she exploited his diminished capacity to secure an inheritance she had no legitimate claim to. My client Stephen White, as the grandson of George's brother, has superior claim under intestate succession should the will be invalidated. Gary called his first witness, Richard Miller, the banker who'd handled George's accounts at First National. Richard took the stand reluctantly, his discomfort visible. Mr. Miller described George White's banking behavior in his final years. Richard shifted in the witness chair. He would come in every few months sometimes, forgetting why he'd come. Once he tried to cash a check that was 6 months old. He wore the same clothes repeatedly, sometimes didn't seem to recognize me, even though I'd helped him for 20 years. Catherine's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Miller, were George White's accounts ever overdrawn? No, but were checks eventually deposited and cleared? Yes. Did he maintain multiple accounts with your institution? 3, checking 2 savings and a money market. And these accounts were managed successfully until his death. Technically, yes. So despite occasional confusion, Mr. White successfully handled complex financial matters for decades. Richard's reluctance was answer enough. The second witness was Deborah Harris, who owned the diner on Millbrook Falls, Main Street. She described George talking to himself, wearing unwashed clothing, exhibiting what she characterized as paranoid behavior about being followed or watched. Catherine's cross-examination focused on a single point. Did Mr. White ever fail to pay for his meals? No, he always paid cash. Deborah's voice was quiet. Exact change every time. So he understood transactions, mathematical calculation, the value of currency, I suppose. The medical expert was Dr. Ronald Sanchez, a geriatric psychiatrist from Albany, who'd never examined George but had reviewed the photographic evidence and witness statements. His testimony was confident, clinical, damning. The hoarding behavior, social withdrawal, apparent paranoia, and self-neglect are all consistent with frontotemporal dementia or similar cognitive degenerative conditions. In my professional opinion, George White lacked testamentary capacity. Catherine didn't cross-examine. Instead, she presented her own evidence methodically, building a counter-narrative that transformed eccentricity from pathology to strategy. Dr. Edward Harris took the stand, a town physician who'd actually examined George. I evaluated Mr. White in June 2022, 14 months before his death. He scored 28 out of 30 on the mini mental state exam, well within normal cognitive function. We discussed current events, philosophy, local history. His mind was sharp, his memory intact. He chose to live simply, but choice is not the same as incapacity. Catherine presented George's journals, passing them to Judge Scott for review. These span 6 decades, Your Honor. Note the consistent handwriting, organized chronology, coherent narrative. These are not the writings of someone with dementia. She called Margaret Wilson, who walked to the stand with the careful dignity of someone who'd loved and lost and learned to carry both. Margaret described conversations with George that continued until 2020, discussions about literature and philosophy that required intellectual engagement impossible for someone with cognitive decline. He was eccentric, not insane. Margaret's voice carried conviction earned through decades of knowing someone others had dismissed. He lived simply by choice, protecting something he believed mattered more than comfort. Unconventional living is not evidence of incompetence. Catherine's final witness was Jennifer herself. She took the stand aware of Stephen's eyes on her, Gary's pen poised to shred whatever testimony she offered. Miss Williams, describe your relationship with George White. Jennifer kept her voice steady. He was my great-uncle. I spent summers with him as a child, learning to bake bread and listening to his stories about the old days. After I moved to Chicago, I visited every few months. We'd talk about business, about quality versus quantity, about having patience for things that matter. And did you ever discuss his will or inheritance? Never. I didn't know he'd left me the farm until the reading. I assumed he'd leave everything to Patricia and Stephen, like he left them the Manhattan properties and tech shares. Gary's cross-examination was aggressive. You visited an elderly, isolated man repeatedly over 10 years. You expect this court to believe you never discussed what he might leave you. We discussed bread. Mr. Young, fermentation times and starter maintenance, not inheritance. Convenient that you can't prove these innocent conversations. Jennifer met his eyes. Convenient that you can't prove they were anything else. Judge Scott called a brief recess. When court reconvened, her expression suggested she'd made preliminary decisions. Mr. Young, I've reviewed your evidence. The photographs show unconventional living, not cognitive impairment. Your witnesses describe eccentricity, not dementia. Your medical expert never examined the decedent and bases his opinion entirely on lifestyle choices. The defense has presented actual medical evaluation, contemporaneous journals demonstrating mental acuity, and witness testimony regarding sophisticated intellectual engagement. Eccentricity is not incompetence. Living simply is not dementia. Choosing solitude over society is not grounds to invalidate testamentary decisions. Mr. White's will is detailed, specific, and legally sound. Stephen White's claim of undue influence is dismissed. Stephen's face went through rage and disbelief before settling on controlled fury. He stood abruptly, Patricia's hand on his arm, the only thing preventing him from speaking. But the judge wasn't finished. However, we still have Mr. Wilson's intervention to address. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 to hear his claim. Anthony Wilson arrived in a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, carrying himself with the entitled confidence of someone who'd never encountered a problem money couldn't solve. His lawyer, Jonathan Wright, was Manhattan expensive, the kind of attorney who billed by the 6-minute increment and made those increments count. Your Honor, Jonathan began, my client represents the legitimate interests of the Costello family estate. In 1925, Enzo Costello and Jonathan White entered into a partnership agreement for the production and distribution of distilled spirits. This agreement stipulates a 50-50 profit split on all production. The vault, recently discovered on White Oak Farm, contains approximately 11,000 bottles of whiskey produced under this partnership. Mr. Wilson is entitled to 50% of the contents. He presented the document with theatrical flourish, the aged paper and brass seal designed to convey authenticity through visual weight. Catherine requested immediate recess to authenticate the document. Judge Scott granted 72 hours, setting reconvening for Thursday morning. Those 3 days passed in compressed intensity. Dr. Cynthia Lewis worked around the clock. examining the partnership agreement under every analytical tool available. Her final report arrived Wednesday evening, dense with technical language that Catherine translated into legal ammunition. Thursday morning, Catherine presented findings that transformed Anthony's confident claim into criminal exposure. Your Honor, we've had the alleged partnership agreement examined by Dr. Cynthia Lewis, a forensic document examiner with 30 years of experience. Her analysis reveals significant irregularities. She projected Dr. Lewis's comparison images, Jonathan White's signature on the partnership agreement, beside his authenticated signature from a 1932 distillery license application. The partnership signature showed uniform pressure, consistent line weight, mechanical precision. The authenticated signature displayed natural variation pressure changes, the organic inconsistency of human handwriting. This signature was traced, not signed. Catherine's voice was steady. Furthermore, the notary seal references Thomas Morrison of Albany County. New York State records show no notary by that name existed in 1925. The paper is authentic vintage stock. The ink is period correct, but the document itself is a modern forgery. Jonathan Wright objected immediately. This is speculation based on microscopic analysis. Paper degradation over a century could account for these variations. Catherine pulled out the evidence from Brick 247, the private investigator's report from 1934 photographs of Jonathan White's truck, showing severed brake lines, the threatening letter from Enzo Costello, dated May 1934, Your Honor. Even if this partnership agreement were authentic, which forensic analysis proves it is not, the Costello family murdered Jonathan White when he refused to surrender control. Under New York law, contracts procured through criminal duress, intimidation, or violence are void ab initio. Void from the beginning. She placed the photographs on the judge's bench brake lines, cut with mechanical precision, investigative notes describing the clean edges, inconsistent with mechanical failure. Enzo's letter explicitly threatening consequences for refusal. The Costello Syndicate killed Jonathan White on June 14, 1934. His son George spent 89 years hiding from that family's legacy of violence. Anthony Wilson's claim is based on forged documentation presented to profit from his grandfather's murder. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Scott's gavel cracked like thunder. Order. Mr. Wright, does your client wish to respond to these allegations? Jonathan stood slowly, his confidence visibly eroding. Your Honor, we were not aware of these historical documents. We maintain that the partnership agreement is authentic, but in light of new evidence, we request time to numb. Judge Scott's voice carried absolute authority. Mr. Wilson, did you present a forged document to this court? Anthony stood, his expensive suit suddenly looking like costume rather than armor. That document was provided to me by a historical researcher. I had no reason to doubt its authenticity. Catherine produced a second folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter additional evidence. Security camera footage from White Oak Farm, dated January 8th of this year. The video played on the courtroom screen, grainy night vision, showing Anthony Wilson and two unidentified men with crowbars attempting to pry open the barn's entrance. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. The figures were clearly visible. Anthony's face recognizable despite the darkness. Mr. Wilson attempted burglary when he believed he couldn't win through legal means. Catherine's voice was ice. He fabricated evidence, presented forged documents to this court, and attempted theft. This isn't a legitimate legal claim, it's criminal conspiracy. Judge Scott studied Anthony with an expression that suggested she'd seen every variety of human weakness, and this particular flavor was especially tiresome. Mr. Wilson, you've presented a forged document to this court, attempted illegal entry to property you don't own, and made claims based on your grandfather's documented history of violent crime. I'm denying your intervention in its entirety. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation of document forgery, attempted burglary, and fraud. Bailiff, detain Mr. Wilson. The bailiff moved with practiced efficiency. Anthony's face cycled through shock, rage, and fear before settling on pale resignation. Jonathan Wright was already backing away, distancing himself from a client who'd just become radioactive. Court is adjourned. Judge Scott gathered her papers with the finality of someone closing a book that had overstayed its welcome. George White's will stands as written. White Oak Farm and all its contents belong to Jennifer Williams. This matter is concluded. The courtroom emptied slowly. Spectators processing drama that had exceeded their expectations. Stephen left without looking at Jennifer Patricia, following him with the rigid posture of someone whose worldview had just been forcibly rearranged. Anthony was led away in handcuffs, his expensive lawyer nowhere in evidence. Jennifer sat in the wooden pew, Catherine beside her, both women too exhausted for celebration. You won. Catherine's voice was matter-of-fact. The farm is yours. The whiskey is yours. Stephen can't contest Anthony's facing criminal charges. It's over. Jennifer nodded, but the victory felt strange in her chest, less like triumph than the settling of accounts too long deferred. She thought about George spending it 89 years terrified, about Jonathan murdered for refusing to surrender what he'd built, about legacy purchased with loneliness and sacrifice that maybe shouldn't have been necessary. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like wasps, sensing blood. Jennifer pushed through them without comment, Catherine running interference, both women reaching Catherine's sedan before any meaningful questions could land. Anna was waiting at the farm, her car parked in the driveway that no longer felt like enemy territory. She emerged when Jennifer arrived, and they stood facing each other with the weight of shared victory and inherited burden between them. We won. Jennifer's voice was flat with exhaustion. Anna nodded slowly. So now what? Now we decide what legacy means when it's not about hiding anymore. They formed White Oak Legacy Distillery LLC. The following week, papers filed with the state establishing 50-50 ownership between Jennifer Williams and Anna King Morrison. Catherine became general counsel on retainer. Michael accepted the title of master distiller and property manager with 10% equity. Jennifer's recognition that partnership mattered more than maximum profit. Timothy Clark's first auction at Sotheby's happened in March. 100 demijohns sold to collectors who understood what they were buying. The average price was $22,000 per bottle, total revenue $2.2 million. After Timothy's 15% commission, Jennifer and Anna each netted $935,000. The money transformed possibility into reality. Jennifer hired contractors to restore the farmhouse work that took 4 months and $380,000, but returned the Victorian structure to something approaching its original dignity. New foundation, repaired roof, modern electrical and plumbing hidden behind period-appropriate facades. The house that had been George's prison became something that might accommodate actual living. The barn's transformation was more extensive. Michael oversaw construction of a public tasting room and visitor center spaces designed to welcome people while keeping the vault's location absolutely secret. He installed a false floor system so sophisticated that even ground-penetrating radar wouldn't reveal the entrance beneath. The vault remained accessible only to family, the subterranean cathedral of whiskey, a private temple that tourists would never see. Above ground, Michael built a modern distillery using Jonathan White's original recipes documentation pulled from journals that detailed every aspect of production from grain selection through barrel aging. The first batch of White Oak Reserve 2025 went into barrels in June. Michael learning the craft through trial and study and the kind of obsessive attention to detail that separated competence from mastery. Jennifer donated $600,000 to Millbrook Falls money distributed with strategic precision. $200,000 endowed a scholarship fund for local students. $100,000 renovated the library with a new wing that made Stephen's previous $50,000 donation look performative. Another $100,000 funded a small business incubator on Main Street, supporting the kind of local commerce that gave towns identity beyond tourist traffic. The final $200,000 rebuilt the community recreation center, creating space for the town's children that would outlast anyone's memory of why it existed. The town's response was immediate and lasting. Bob Thompson at the hardware store started giving Jennifer contractor discounts without asking. Deborah Harris named a sandwich after her at the diner. The town council that had been skeptical of the city girl who'd inherited the crazy hermit's farm now treated Jennifer like someone who belonged, which felt stranger and more valuable than the money that bought the goodwill. Stephen's fate unfolded with the mechanical inevitability of consequences meeting choices. His tech shares collapsed in a market correction that spring paper wealth evaporating in the span of weeks. Patricia cut him off financially with a coldness that suggested decades of disappointment finding expression. He sold the vintage car collection to pay legal fees Gary Young demanded in full, then moved to Florida with the haunted expression of someone who'd played for everything and lost worse than broke. 6 months after the trial, Patricia visited the farm unannounced. Jennifer found her standing by the newly planted white oak sapling, looking at the bronze plaque Michael had installed at its base. "Your great-uncle made the right choice." Patricia's voice carried something that might have been apology if she were capable of the emotion. "I'm sorry we doubted you. Stephen needed to learn that entitlement isn't the same as earning. I failed to teach him that." Jennifer said nothing, letting the silence carry whatever response Patricia needed to hear. Anthony Wilson's trial happened in August. Convicted on 3 counts, attempted burglary, presentation of forged documents, and fraud. The sentence was 2 years in minimum security, $500,000 in fines, 5 years probation. His real estate business collapsed under investigation. Clients fleeing an operator whose grandfather's criminal legacy had finally caught up with the family name. The Costello empire, such as it was, ended not with violence, but with a middle-aged man in an orange jumpsuit, learning that some legacies are curses. Michael's transformation from hired contractor to partner happened gradually enough that Jennifer couldn't identify the exact moment. Friendship became something more complicated. Maybe it was the night he stood guard with a shotgun during the EPA threat. Maybe it was the 100 small moments of competence and loyalty, and the particular quiet strength that comes from someone who's lost everything and learned the difference between worth and wealth. They were testing a new batch of whiskey in the farmhouse kitchen one evening in September when Jennifer finally acknowledged what had been building for months. "Michael, I couldn't have done any of this without you. The vault, the trial, the distillery. You made it possible." He looked up from the sample glass, his expression careful. "You did the hard work. I just moved some dirt and installed some lights. You did more than that." Jennifer's voice was steady. "You believed in something everyone called worthless. You saw potential where everyone else saw failure. You protected me when protection mattered." The kitchen was quiet, except for the old house settling around them, wood and brick adjusting to new purpose after decades of neglect. "Jennifer, I need to tell you something." Michael set down the glass, his hands finding the counter's edge like he needed physical anchor. "I've been in love with you since the day you told Gary Young to get a warrant. Since you stood in that courtroom and refused to let Stephen make you small. Since you split $50 million with a woman you'd never met because it was right." She crossed the kitchen, closing distance that felt simultaneously vast and negligible. "I know. I've known for weeks. I love you too." The kiss was inevitable and surprising simultaneously, the kind of moment that feels both planned and spontaneous. When they broke apart, Michael's hands framed her face with the gentleness of someone who understood that valuable things required careful handling. "I don't have money." His voice carried old pain. "I can't offer you anything except work and loyalty, and you're offering me partnership." Jennifer's certainty surprised her. "You're offering me someone who understands that legacy isn't about what you guard, it's about what you build." Michael proposed in November, standing in front of the white oak sapling as autumn leaves fell around them like benediction. The ring was simple silver, the question even simpler. "Will you build this legacy with me?" "Yes." The wedding was planned for the following spring ceremony in the restored barn that had witnessed so much discovery and transformation. But first came the anniversary. February 2025 marked 1 year since the trial's conclusion, and Jennifer decided celebration was necessary even if the timing felt arbitrary. White Oak, Legacy Distillery's grand opening, happened on a Saturday invitation-only event for 250 guests who'd played roles large and small in the year's transformation. Anna arrived early with her husband Mark and daughters Rebecca and Sophie. The younger girl's surgery scar barely visible beneath her hairline. Thanks to medical care that 50% of whiskey profits had made possible, Margaret Wilson arrived wearing her finest dress, the 79-year-old woman who'd loved George from a distance, now treated as grandmother of the enterprise. Catherine Hill came with her husband legal expertise, having evolved into genuine friendship. Timothy Clark brought his sister Jessica, the auctioneer and the interior designer who'd helped transform the barn's public spaces. The restored farmhouse gleamed in winter sunlight, its Victorian elegance finally matching the ambition that had built it. The barn's tasting room held enough people for speeches without feeling crowded, exposed beams overhead, creating cathedral echo that transformed ordinary sound into something approaching ceremony. Jennifer stood before the assembled guests, Michael beside her, Anna on her other side. Three people connected by whiskey and blood and the complicated ghost of a man who'd sacrificed everything to protect something he'd never see flourish. 1 year ago, I stood in a courtroom fighting for a farm everyone said was worthless. Her voice carried to the back of the room without strain. They were wrong, but not because the land had mineral rights or development potential. They were wrong because they mistook isolation for value hiding, for protecting survival, for living. My great-great-grandfather, Jonathan White, built a legacy in secret. My great-uncle George White protected it in silence for 89 years. He lived in poverty, so we could stand here in prosperity. But the real legacy isn't the whiskey in those bottles. It's the lesson that the greatest treasures aren't handed to you on silver platters. They're buried in mud, waiting for someone patient enough to dig, stubborn enough to protect, brave enough to share. George wrote in his final journal, "Don't repeat my mistakes. Don't sacrifice love for security. Don't choose isolation over connection. This distillery belongs to Anna and me in ownership, but it belongs to all of you in spirit. Everyone who understands that good things take time, that quality matters more than speed, that legacy is what you build together, not what you guard alone." The crowd stood applause, filling the barn with sound that felt like validation and celebration and relief that something protected for so long could finally be acknowledged without fear. Jennifer opened one of the remaining demijohns from the vault. 7,800 still rested underground, worth approximately $170 million at current market rates and poured carefully for everyone present. The whiskey caught winter light streaming through high windows, amber liquid that held 90 years of patience made visible. To Jonathan who created, to George who protected, to all of us who dig. Everyone drank the whiskey's complexity, spreading across palates unused to such refined intensity. Caramel and smoke, cherry and leather vanilla, and oak, and something underneath that tasted like history refusing to stay buried. After the public celebration wound down, after the guests departed and the caterers cleaned and the barn returned to expensive silence, Jennifer found herself alone in the vault with George's journals spread across his desk. She read the final entry one more time, his handwriting shaky but fundamentally coherent. Think about this. I spent 106 years on Earth, 89 of them terrified, hiding, protecting liquid in glass bottles, while sacrificing every human connection that might have made life worth living. Was I a hero who preserved legacy, or a tragedy who protected the wrong things? Could I have lived differently and still kept what mattered safe? What are you protecting in your own life, and what are you sacrificing to do it? Sometimes the treasure isn't worth the isolation it demands. Sometimes the best way to protect something is to share it with people worthy of trust. Jennifer closed the journal and placed it carefully in the desk drawer. She turned off the lights, watching the vault disappear into darkness that held no more secrets. The stairs felt familiar now, muscle memory guiding her ascent. Above ground, Michael waited in the farmhouse kitchen with coffee and the question about tomorrow's work schedule. Anna's car was still in the driveway, her family visiting for the weekend. Margaret had left her shawl on the coat rack, excused to return next week for tea and conversation. Jennifer was not alone, would never be alone again if she chose connection over the kind of protection that became imprisonment. George had spent 89 years guarding whiskey that would outlive him by centuries. Jennifer would spend her years building something that mattered more than bottles family chosen, and found partnership earned through trust legacy, defined by what you give rather than what you keep. The farmhouse lights glowed warm against February darkness. The white oak sapling stood 8 feet tall now, growing toward the sky, while roots dug deep into soil that had been called dead, but turned out to be merely waiting for someone patient enough to nurture. So that's Jennifer's story. She went from bankrupt and abandoned to building an empire, not because someone gave it to her, but because she was willing to dig when everyone else walked away. George spent 89 years protecting treasure. But the real treasure wasn't whiskey. It was teaching Jennifer that patience, perseverance, and integrity matter more than easy money. That legacy means nothing if it demands you sacrifice everything that makes life worth living. That protection without connection is just another word for prison. Here's the question worth considering. Have you ever been counted out by people who didn't know your story? Have you ever inherited something, not money, but a lesson, a value, a legacy from someone who believed in you when no one else did? Have you ever had to choose between protecting what you have and living the life you want? Drop your answer in the comments if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're worth more than the world tells them. And remember, the greatest treasures aren't handed to you. They're buried in mud, waiting for someone willing to get dirty enough to find them.